Hello everyone, and welcome to the Native Paranormal Crossroads. So we have episode 29, and we are with two of the Rangers this week. We have Jonathan. Hello, Jonathan. Hello, Stan.
Hello.
And we have the wing woman, Laura Massey.
I'm happy to be your wing woman, Dale. Great to be here. Great to see you, Stan and John. And we've got somebody hiding here behind the black screen, haven't we, Dale?
Yes, we do. So, Stan, would you like to introduce who our special guest is this week?
Sure. So, on this episode, we do have a special guest. Her name is Rose Eckhoff. She is very well known to the UFO and paranormal world. She has been present in many of the different conferences that John and I have spoke at over the years. And she's currently one of the conference chairwomen for the Albuquerque UFO UAP explorations, which they are preparing for a conference in the coming year. And so I'd like to introduce her. Her name is Rose Eckhoff. She was born and raised in Leesburg, Florida, and she has been passionately involved in the field of ufology since her early years. Her first UFO experience occurred in 1969 when she was 12 years old. This up-close and personal encounter left her with second-degree burns and a home visit from the Men in Black. Ever since this incident, Rose has been on a relentless quest to uncover where these phenomena originate and why they are here. With 2 decades of experience as a Mufon field investigator, Rose has dedicated her career to investigating and understanding the UFO phenomena. Her expertise extends beyond UFOs, and she has also had a sighting of Bigfoot and several other experiences with ghosts and hauntings. Rose's extensive background, combined with her unwavering commitment to exploring the unknown, has positioned her as the leading authority in the field. Under her guidance, the Alien Explorations Conference aims to provide a platform for experts and enthusiasts alike to share knowledge, experiences, and insights into the mysteries that captivate us all. So, welcome, Rose.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I will tell you about my first UFO experience. It happened in my hometown where I grew up and was raised in Leesburg, which is 42 miles northwest of Orlando and about 70 miles west of Cape Canaveral. My town was a citrus town, orange groves and grapefruit groves everywhere. That's how we made our money, with citrus and in cattle. I was babysitting for my parents' best friends, and they got home a little after midnight and put me in a taxi to send me home. Now, they lived out in the country 2 or 3 miles on a dirt and gravel road surrounded by orange groves and cow pasture. That's what was out there. So I'm in the taxi in the back seat, and we're driving along, and all of a sudden I could hear static on the radio. And then the cab just stopped in the middle of the road. And of course, being 12 years old, I was thinking the worst, that maybe he was going to do something really horrible to me. But the guy in the front was pretty hysterical. He was a young gentleman in his early 20s. And he's pointing out the window, yelling, "What is that? What is that?" So I rolled down the window in the back seat and hung out and looked up. And it was a huge silver metallic disc. It was silver and round. It had colored lights going off and on around the perimeter, and above it were lights, like windows that you could see through the lights, but I didn't see anybody looking back at me. And then I saw a little dome on the top. It just hung there in the air. It didn't make any noise whatsoever. It didn't move. I would say it was just above the level of the orange trees. We had a cow pasture to the right of us, and then orange trees all the way around the cow pasture. There were cows in the corner of the pasture, but they weren't making any noise, and I can't tell you how many there were or what kind of cows they were, because honestly, I wasn't paying attention. I was looking up. So I don't know how long we sat there in this taxi looking up at the cow pasture, but I remember the gentleman in the front seat made me come in, pull in from the window, roll up the window, and lock the door. I guess he thought if something was going to happen, that would protect us. All of a sudden, some like sparkles, like little flames or sparkles, came out from underneath the craft, and it went straight up and it just disappeared. Then the taxi cab driver was able to start the vehicle. And I remember him looking at me and said, well, what do I do? And I always told my father everything. And I'm like, call my father, call my father. And so he radioed into the cab headquarters, and they patched him into the phone line of my dad's phone number, because that's what they could do in the 60s. I don't see them doing that now, but they could do it back then. So I told my dad what happened, and my dad said, well, what do you want me to do about it? And I said, well, I was doing a project on radiation. So I had all these brochures in my room from civil defense. And back then there were only 1-800 numbers. So I said, call the civil defense and tell them what we saw. Now, I thought, for being 12 years old, I kind of kept my head pretty well. I think I was too curious to be scared, to be honest. I was fascinated by what I had seen. So by the time we got to the house, and we were like 2 or 3 miles outside of town, and we got to my house around 2 a.m. Now, I left a little after midnight. So I guess there's some missing time. I can't tell you how much. I can't tell you how long we sat on that road, because I don't know. I don't remember that. I just remember getting home, and it was around 2 o'clock because my dad made a comment about it. The cab driver came in with us, and when we walked in the door, the phone was ringing, and it was the civil defense on the phone, and they were telling my dad it was a strayed satellite. Well, at 12 years old, I'm not stupid, and I had been to Cape Kennedy, Cape Canaveral many, many times, and I knew what a satellite looked like, and this was not a satellite. So my dad said, okay, hung up the phone. The cab driver left. We went to bed. This was on a Friday night, well, Saturday morning by then. Got up the next morning, and 2 gentlemen showed up at our door, and they were in black suits with black sunglasses and black hats. And their identifications said they were from security with NASA. They refused to come into the house. My dad invited them in. They'd only come to the door of the porch. And I guess we spent 45 minutes to an hour with them asking me all kinds of questions about what I had seen. And all of a sudden, one of them stopped and looked at me. He said, how did you get that red skin? And my dad kind of took a double take and went, oh my gosh, she didn't go to bed looking like that last night. I sunburn easy. So my dad was used to seeing me sunburn, but never like this. And I hadn't been anywhere to get sunburned. So I said, I don't know. That's all I could say. I don't know. And it was my face, my neck, and my arms that were sunburned, and a little bit of blistering too. And I remember the 2 gentlemen in the suits looking at each other, and they looked at me and they said, you are not to talk about this. If we find out that you have been talking about it, we will put your father in jail and you will never see him again. And my dad, he got really upset. I got the Rosalind, Rebecca, what have you been up to? Blah, blah, blah. And I do remember crying and saying, I didn't do anything. All I did was babysit and come home. That's all I did. So again, they reiterated I was not to talk about it. I was not to say anything to anybody, and they left. My dad was mad all day. He wouldn't even talk to any of us. And I spent the day in my room with the door shut because I was just wanted to keep away from my dad. I mean, he didn't yell or scream or hit me or anything like that, but I could tell he was angry because, who wants to be threatened with jail, when you didn't do anything wrong? Nobody does. Well, the next day was Sunday, and we always went to church, but my dad said, we're not going to church. You're going to take me and show me where you saw this thing. So I took him out there to the cow pasture, showed him exactly where it was, and in the cow pasture were 3 round circles burnt into the ground. I don't know how big they were. We didn't measure them. I don't know how deep they were, but they were definitely burnt. And my dad looked at me and he said, "Well, I believe everything you told me, but we're good Americans, good citizens, and we're going to do what we've been asked to do. We're not going to say anything." Well, my dad knows me really well, and he knows I said a lot of stuff because I'm sure I did. I probably didn't tell my friends. I don't remember telling them because I don't think they would have believed me, but I did. I did talk to people I thought that might, understand. And I remember thinking, I'm going to find out what this is, why they came here, and who those people are that showed at my door. So in school, I went through every book in the library and read everything I could find on anything paranormal, just not UFOs, ghosts, Bigfoot, anything I could find. The same way at the public library, I remember reading everything I could find and then them ordering books for me. Um, so that's kind of what happened. Several years later, and we didn't talk about it. My parents and I didn't talk about it. I did go back to the cow field about 10 or 20 years later, and there were three circles where no grass would grow, and the cows in the pasture would not go near those circles. I do remember that. I understand now it's a housing complex out there, so the field is probably gone because I haven't gone back to check since. Did talk to my father before he passed away, and he told me the Monday after this had happened that weekend, he had got on the phone and called everybody he could think of, including NASA, Civil Defense, the Air Force, because McCoy Air Force Base was in Orlando, near where the airport is now. In fact, the airport is where the base was. He called the governor's office and all kinds of people, and they all denied knowing anything about his original phone call. They denied coming to our house. They denied everything. And I think my dad was just like, the government's covering up. Something's going on. But he wouldn't talk about it. For the most part, he wouldn't. So again, I believe everything you said, and I understand why you're trying to find answers. And, that's basically what he said. So that was the first big experience I ever had. I don't know how much missing time. I don't remember seeing any aliens. I didn't have any marks on my body other than the sunburn and the blisters, and that was where I wasn't wearing clothing. Yes, you had a question.
So, yeah, Rose. I was wondering, at the time that this occurred, were there any other traffic out on that road, or
no?
Was there? No, there wasn't.
It was the country road. No houses on either side until you got to the cemetery, which was at the east end on the left-hand side, and past the cemetery were some houses. It was all orange grove and cow pasture. That is the only thing that was on that road, except on the corner. When you started going down that road, Moran's Supermarket was this little bitty supermarket on the left-hand corner, and of course it was closed because it's, the middle of the night on a Friday night. But no, we didn't see any other vehicles at all. I really wish I'd been the kind of...
What was your weather like on that night?
Clear. It was warm, probably in the 70s. Clear, not a cloud in the sky. I don't remember seeing the moon. I do remember seeing stars. I wish I had written everything down in a diary. I didn't do diaries when I was a kid. I wish I had drawn what I had seen right away. I didn't do either one of those things. And I'm sorry. I've always felt bad that I never did that, because I bet there's details I'm missing that I don't remember. But I can only tell you what I do remember.
Oh, yeah.
So did you ever have any contact with the cab driver again, or do you know whether he ever got visited by the men in black?
He disappeared from town. He was never seen again. My dad called the cab company, and all they would say is he quit and left town that weekend. I assume I don't know this for sure. I assume that the men in black showed up for him too. And I assume he freaked out and left, but I don't know that for a fact. All I know is he was gone. We never saw him.
So
I don't even know his name.
a question about the Men in Black. Do you remember specifically what they were like in a bit more detail? Because I remember John Edmonds talking about he had the Men in Black come around and visit him, and he actually saw them with like chicken skin, and he realized they didn't look like they were trying to disguise themselves as humans. Do you know
Right.
in detail? Do you remember from them? Did they look like your regular humans? Were they tall? Were they small? Just
They
out
were.
of curiosity.
All I remember is they were pale.
Yes.
You could only see their hands and their face, but they had sunglasses over their face. I don't know about hair because there was a hat covering their head. I was probably too scared to, after they were being threatening, to do as much detail as I would like.
Yes.
I don't remember a weird voice. I know people said they've seen like almost like a cord or something hanging out from the back of them. I didn't see anything like that. And I don't remember weird voices. And I'd say they were like 5'8", 5'10". And I'm guessing because we were on the porch and it was 2 steps to get into our porch and they were at the bottom. So I was, up above them a little bit. So as far as giving you an exact height, I really can't do that because I'm not sure. They didn't smile at all. They were on topic. They didn't go off the topic at all. They had absolutely no sense of humor. They were almost monotone, but not quite.
Yeah.
No, not a lot of emotion. That's what I remember, when they said, well, we'll put your father in jail. They didn't raise their voice to say that. But yet the way they said it scared me. Yes.
Did your father say anything like in hindsight about it, about the experience, about what they looked like? Or
He would not talk about it. He was so mad. Oh, he was so mad. He would not talk. He had me go out there the Sunday morning and he saw those burnt spots in the ground, those round circles. And he just looked at me and kind of sighed and, gave me, I believe everything you said. And, we're not going to talk about it, although he knew me too well. And then he talked about it a little bit right before he passed away. We're talking 50 years later here. And wanted to let me know that he had followed up, but everybody denied knowing anything.
Rose?
We also checked the paper. Yes?
I was just going to ask, throughout the rest of your life, did you ever get the sense that there was somebody there watching or keeping an eye on you at times, or any of that uneasy gut feeling?
Well, that? I've seen lights in the sky often, but always different. Nothing close up like I did before, and nothing where I can tell what it really looked like.
How about these men in black?
I never saw them again. And, I didn't get contacted by anybody either. Nobody called us. Nobody asked us any questions. Nothing. And I did not do a Mufon report. I didn't even really know about Mufon back then. I don't know if they had started quite yet. I thought they started in the 70s. We didn't file a police report because my dad felt like the fact that we called civil defense was a big enough thing. And the fact that NASA showed up, to him, that was a big enough thing that we didn't need to contact anybody else. But like I said, he made calls and found out everybody denied everything. And he went above and beyond. My dad normally was not the type that would have gotten on the phone and researched that much, but he did. Again, he didn't like being threatened, and he didn't like me being all sunburned, and he didn't know why when I hadn't been in the sun, because that's what it looked like. It looked like a horrible sunburn with blisters. That's what it looked like to him.
How long did that last for, Rose? The sunburn, how long did that last?
A week. It takes about a week for it to fade away. Yeah. They did have me checked though. My dad would have me checked every year for skin cancer. And I don't know why he did that, but he just said you have to be checked every year. So I don't know if he was told to check me or what, but I was checked every year for that. And knock on wood, I haven't had that. Now I have really terrible skin. I've always had terrible skin that bruises easy. I bump my arm and there's a mark there. My skin's always been thin, always been dry, ever since then. So I don't know. I don't know if I was exposed to radiation or not, but I didn't lose hair. I didn't have any nausea. I didn't, my teeth, I still have my teeth. So if I was exposed, it was a small amount, must have been. But it was enough to burn my skin because I was hanging out kind of partly under it. No beams of light came down. Nothing like that happened that I
Did you
remember.
notice any unusual smells or anything? You actually leaned
Nothing.
out of the vehicle. No.
I was hanging out of the cab. I was hanging out of the cab, looking up, trying to see what it was and figure it out. I do remember that. And that's why I can remember what I do remember.
I kind of imagine like a Pippi Longstockings hanging out of the cab window.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hanging on. My bottom is on the where the window is, and I'm hanging out. The whole upper half of my body hanging on to the top of the cab, looking up at the thing. And the cab driver did not like that. Get in here.
At you to get back in.
Oh, he did, yeah. Get in here. He made me roll up the window and lock the door. And I remember thinking, like, this is going to save us. At 12, thinking that at 12. Because I knew this was something that wasn't supposed to be there. You might be young, but you know enough to know something that belongs there and something that doesn't. It didn't look like any kind of plane or helicopter I had ever seen. Didn't look like a plane or helicopter at all. And it certainly didn't look like a satellite.
So, Rose,
can you describe the lights? Can you describe the lights a little more?
They were round and they were blinking off and on around the perimeter. And it was 2 or 3 colors. I can't remember for sure what the colors were. I know there was like white or gold or, golden yellow, but there were a couple other colors. I don't know if they were blue or red or green or what, but they were blinking off and on around it. And I only saw the one side. So I didn't see it blink all the way around. And the windows above it were kind of round and you could see the light through the windows. But like I said, I didn't see anybody looking at me and I couldn't see any type of structure through the window, at least from my angle. I couldn't see anything but the light. That's all I could see.
How about structure below it, like landing gear or anything like that?
Nothing. It was smooth, round underneath. I didn't see any type of markings, anything that looked like hieroglyphics or anything. It was smooth, a dull finish, but silver. It had a little dome on the top.
How big it was? How far away it was?
Oh, it was close. Oh no, it was close. If you're in your living room, Stan, it would be from where you're sitting to maybe where the bathroom starts.
Oh wow!
It was like right there. Our car was right beside the fence for the cow pasture. And it was just above the cow pasture and a little bit over our vehicle. Wow. And it was big. I can't tell you how big it was. I don't know. It was big. It was bigger than our car, way bigger than our cab, I mean. And it just hovered. It didn't move at all. That's what fascinated me the most. No noise. It didn't move. And I couldn't hear mosquitoes, crickets. I couldn't hear the cows. Dead silence everywhere.
So, Rose, you mentioned that you were missing time. So, when you set off in the taxi, do you know roughly what time you set off to when you got there to how long the destination is altogether?
Well, the bars in Florida at that time, because my friends, my parents' friends, worked at a bar on the weekend. Lincoln was a drummer, so he was a drummer in the band. The bars closed at like midnight, and they were able to leave right away. So they were home probably by 12:15. They had called the cab from the bar before they even got home to come pick me up, and it was probably between 12:15 and 12:30 when I left their house. And I did not get home till like 2 a.m. And it's only like a 2 or 3 mile drive. And it's a quiet little religious town in the middle of the night. The bars are closed. There's no traffic on this dirt road because there's hardly any houses. People did use it as a shortcut, kind of, but it's dirt and gravel road. It's not quite 2 lane, maybe a lane and a half road. So, an hour and 15, I don't know, I'm guessing. Because I don't know how long we sat there looking up at this UFO before the car started. But again, we didn't get home till around 2 a.m. because my dad was watching the clock. So yeah, I surmise we had missing time. I can't tell you for sure. I didn't see any little alien beings. I didn't see any people that didn't look right till Saturday. And I could even tell you they didn't look right. They just, weren't very nice.
So just want to introduce Andrew Bartsitz, who's just joined us, Rose. Are you there, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm here. How's it going, guys?
Hey, Andrew.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Andrew.
Good. Really incredible story here from Rose.
I got a question for you. After this happened, did you find yourself, in state of questioning? Were the memories on your surface, subsurface? What was it like the few hours after?
Reliving it over and over, trying to figure out what I had seen, because I wanted to know what it was. I always asked a lot of questions when I was young, still do. And I wanted an explanation, and nobody could give me one, and that was frustrating to me.
How many
I
people
do
were how many people were around you at that time?
one, just the cab driver.
So just the cab driver. And when
Mhm.
you got out of the cab and you were in a house, was there anybody else there?
My mother and my father. And my
Okay.
father was answering the phone. My sister was in bed asleep.
Okay.
My mother was she wasn't into any of this stuff, so she really didn't pay much attention to it. She
So,
said, I remember saying, I'll let your father handle it. And she just
so
didn't get involved. She wasn't
no,
even on the
no one,
porch
wa-
when,
no, no
I'm
one was
sorry?
open to the potential of what happened to you was real.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Although my dad knew I would not lie to him.
Sure.
I did
Sure.
not lie to him. So he knew something had happened.
Right.
I think in his mind, he thought it was military, but he
Okay.
never said that to me because my
So
dad's ex-military himself.
so let's fast forward a few hours. How long did it take before you could say that you fell asleep?
That night
Yeah.
or the next day?
Did you stay up all night long and sleep the
No,
next day?
I was in bed. After that phone call, I went to bed and I was out until the next morning. I think I was up
Right.
at 8 or 9 in the morning, and those folks showed up at our door at like
Right.
around 10,
All right. So a
unannounced.
lot of times with abductees is after the adrenaline wears off, they crash and there's a hypnotic suggestion there and something continues in the dream space.
Well, I will tell you this, I don't dream. If I do, I don't remember them, and that's been my whole life. I don't remember dreams.
Okay. That's just common for a lot of people in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went to bed right away. I went to sleep. Didn't have any trouble going to sleep. Woke up, like I said, around 8 o'clock or so, and those folks showed up at the door. Those two gentlemen at around 10.
Uh-huh.
And we had no warning they were going to come. There was no, they just showed up. And I don't remember what they drove. I didn't pay any attention. And my dad, like I said, he was angry. He really didn't want to talk about any of it. I haven't seen my dad that mad in a long time. But I think part of the anger was the frustration of not knowing what really happened.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that was part of it because he knew I didn't lie. And he couldn't get answers either, which did not make him happy. So that, I know it's kind of cut and dry, but that's when you're a kid, you look at it differently, I think. You
Absolutely. You're not
you
an
look
adult.
at it for what you're seeing, right? You don't put anything into it. You don't try to analyze it very much. You say what you see, and that's all you can kind of do. Now, I will say what I saw is embedded in my memory. Are
Mhm.
there other details? Definitely there could be, but I didn't write them down. I wish I had, but I didn't. And what I'm telling you now is the same story I tell everybody. It doesn't change because I can't embellish it. All I can tell you is what I remember from my point of view, from my perspective.
Have
And
you ever
yes, I
tried
wish I knew where that. Have I what?
have you ever tried hypnotherapy regression?
I don't want to do that. I don't want to open any can of worms. I've had enough traumas in my life, and I don't want to add because then I would have to be worried if something happened. I would have to worry that, oh my gosh, when's it going to happen again? And I don't want to go through that, if that makes sense. I
It
will
does.
tell you, I've had 3 people, strangers at different periods of my life, walk up to me and tell me that I was abducted by aliens. One happened at Walmart, one happened in a ye old hippie shop in Cottonwood, Arizona, and one happened in another store. And I just was like, and then they just walked off. And I'm like, now what is this? Why, why are complete strangers coming to me? Am I glowing? What's the deal? And I never got an answer from them how they knew. I'd ask, well, how do you know this? And they just kind of walk off. So I don't know.
Mhm.
That's weird. Don't you think?
Well, yeah, it's kind of
I
interesting.
In
do.
this form of investigation, nothing is weird.
Now, I will tell you
Dan,
something
would you
that
agree?
happened.
John, you'd agree nothing is weird anymore?
Well, I went to contact in the desert in 2023, not this year, but last year. And I drove, and yeah, it was hot. And I get to the hotel on like the Thursday night. I went to contact on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and I woke up and my leg was like burning, like a sunburn. And I look at my thigh, and there is a huge bright red triangle on my inner thigh. You know how an iron looks
Yep.
almost like it, that's what it looked like, that kind of a shape, but in a triangle, bright red. And I'm like, now what is this? Because I had long pants on. I hadn't been out in the sun. I'd been in the car the whole time with the windows up and they're tinted. And I was just like, what is this? I have no memory of anything happening. I did mention it to a couple people at the conference, and the only thing they said was, oh, this kind of stuff happens at our conferences. And I'm like, is that all
It
I
does. It does happen at the conferences.
It does.
All
It does.
sorts of stuff happens when a bunch of UFO experiencers get together.
So I wish I had had a black light and looked at it. I did not. And I'm stupid because I didn't take a photo, and I know better. I do
So,
UFO research. I know I should have taken a picture. I
so
didn't.
you're curious and yet you're afraid at the same time. There
Maybe.
are
I don't
things you
know.
want to know, but then there's a cutoff line of I don't want to know,
Yeah,
like in the hypnotherapy.
probably. And that lasted 2 or 3 months. It faded to brown and then finally faded away. I did show it to a good friend, and we got a black light out, but it was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the fact. So that was too late. If something had been there, I should have done it right away.
Mhm.
Um, so that's the last weird thing that happened like that.
I know,
So I don't know
Rose,
what they
that
were doing.
I know that working on your book, you've traveled to places like Dracula's castle and
Yep, yep.
all over, over the years. And I know you stayed in a lot of places that were purported to be haunted and things of that nature.
Yes.
Can you share any of those kind of experiences, or like Bigfoot or
Sure.
something
Oh, I
like
can
that? Well,
absolutely. When I was 19, I had graduated from LPN school, and I moved out with one of my friends for the first time. And we got a two. This was in Leesburg again, 2 bedroom, 1 bath cottage, and we would hear walking on the floorboards. I would see things looking through the window, and just all kinds of weird stuff. And I remember we were washing dishes. Susan and I were washing dishes in the kitchen, and we heard a creaking in the living room. And we walked to the living room. We didn't even talk to each other. We walked to the living room, and there is an old man in dirty dungarees, a red flannel shirt that was worn at the elbows, had a beard, gray and white beard, had a fishing cap, dirty fishing cap, round one, with hooks in it and stuff. And he was rocking in a rocking chair, and our front door was locked. So there's no way this man could have gotten in. And I remember looking at Susan, and Susan looked at me like, what the heck? And we turned around and looked back at the chair, and it was empty but still rocking. I remember being outside next, but I don't remember running outside. I just remember being in the front yard going, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because we'd also had instances of, we had a kerosene stove where you have to light a piece of paper for it to catch. Because even though it's Florida, it can get down into the teens and the 20s. It can get cold in the winter. And something would blow it out. You could hear it like somebody blowing it out. So we'd had, like I said, all kinds of stuff like that happen. And then this final thing happened. So we decided to go to the landlord to talk to him about it, because we couldn't be scared of living in our own little house. You can't be afraid of where you live. So, and I talked to my parents about it, my dad, and his thing was, if you two aren't mature enough to live on your own, maybe you both should go back home. So that wasn't helpful. Now, you would think after my UFO experience, he would have been more tolerant, but he wasn't. So anyway, we went to the landlord. His name was Mr. Quabblebaum. And I told him what happened, scared to death to tell him, ready to be laughed at. We sat down. He says, I'm going to show you something. So he turns behind his desk into the bookcase, and he pulls out like a scrapbook, and he puts it on his desk, and he says, see if you can see the man you saw in there. Well, we found him. Turns out the man built the house we lived in the house, died in the house, and kept scaring all of his renters away. So it was validated. It was a real ghost. Well, I wanted to stay then. I was fascinated. Susan was like, I am not staying. Now, our rent was only $150 a month, but I was making $3 an hour as an LPN. So I couldn't afford to live there on my own. I would have had no money. But that's my big first haunting that I saw. I stayed at the Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana. And I stayed upstairs in this room, and there was all these creepy looking dolls on the mantelpiece. And I had to turn the dolls around because I couldn't sleep with them looking at me. And I went to bed. I'm serious. They were creepy. They were old dolls. And I slept great. I always sleep really well in haunted places. I don't know why, but I do. So I went to sleep. So we went to breakfast the next day, and everybody's like, what was going on in your room last night? I said, what do you mean? They said, there was laughing and talking, and we could see shadows under your door. And I mean, like 5 people told me this. And I'm like, I was asleep. I missed the whole party. And I was told later I was in the heartbeat of the house where the hauntings were. But I missed it all. I slept through it. So I didn't get to enjoy that party at all. So that happened. I've had a lot of stuff happen. Gosh.
can
Let's
you?
see what else.
I know you don't want to. I know you don't want to. I don't know when. I know you don't want to delve into too much detail, but can you give a little bit about the shape shifting stuff you experienced when you were a nurse and seeing other medical personnel having to deal with that kind of thing at the hospital?
Okay. I did travel nursing for 15 years altogether, and every hospital, at least every hospital I worked in the United States, was haunted, especially the emergency room and intensive care. I remember one hospital in New Orleans where the ICU, and I worked the transplant unit there, but the ICU there was across from it, and lights would go off in this one room all the time, even when nobody was in there. They had checked the call light would go off, and the lights would go off and on, and they checked the electrical, they checked the call light system, they checked everything, and they couldn't find anything. Well, apparently somebody in there had passed away, and they didn't want to die. You know, they were screaming, "Don't let me die! Don't let me die!" And ever since that happened, and they did pass away. Ever since that happened, they've been having trouble with that room, and they really tried hard not to keep patients in there because of that fact. I also worked in a psych hospital where two rooms at the end of the hall, the patients would not want to sleep in that room because they saw the shadows of people walking in their room, and they could hear whispering, and the temperature would either be ice cold or really, really hot. And the nurses did not like going down there. So, of course, I have to go down there and check it out because that's me. And you could definitely feel the difference. And I brought in my EMF meter and some of my ghost hunting equipment quietly because I work night shift. And there was definite presence in those rooms. Definitely. Of course, I could not tell anybody. I mean, the nurses on the floor all knew, and the techs, and they were like, "What'd you see? What'd you see?" And the other thing that we happened on that same unit, I heard this horrible crash. It sounded like a stretcher, a metal stretcher, had been slammed to the floor. We searched top to bottom and we couldn't find anything. And that crash was so loud that they could hear it through the wall at the office, which was on the other side of our unit, and came running over to see what was going on, the supervisor, because our office was right next to our unit. So that was interesting. And the staff would look at me and go, "I don't know if I want you to work here if stuff's going to happen when you're around." I'm like, "You said this was happening before I ever started here, so you can't put that on me." But I think they were all intrigued. They learned a lot more about how to do proper ghost investigation than they ever planned to. And I think it relieved them their fear a little bit when they realized it wasn't going to hurt them, because nobody got scratched or pinched. Nobody got grabbed, cold hands on the back of your neck. Nothing like that happened. But a psych unit, that's not a good place for that to happen, because that really does frighten your patients. I mean, they already have an issue, and you're not helping it any. So that would be the last room we would use for patients. And we always try to put a couple people in the one room, especially because it didn't seem to be as bad if there was a couple people. If there was just one person, then they kind of had fun, whoever they were. Also, the basement of the children's hospital in Albuquerque. It's the old children's hospital. It's now just offices. They have a ghost down there that tampers with the lights and with the equipment. They use it for storage. And of course, everybody takes me down there, and I'm with my equipment. And I didn't get any EMF readings whatsoever. And I'd love to go back and check it out. It's the old Carrie Tingley Hospital in the basement. And they probably don't love that I've now said that on the air, but that's okay because everybody in town knows it's funny. Everybody knows. Several haunted hotels. Yeah.
Without giving any locations or anything, can you validate that there was hospitals that had to deal with what Navajos refer to as a skinwalker at one of the facilities?
Yes. I was a travel nurse, and I was on assignment at all I will say is one of the native hospitals in the United States. And security is going around knocking on the door, telling us not to come out because a skinwalker had been seen in the parking lot by the ER. I grab my camera. I go following him out because I want a picture of it. And he was so mad. He said, "Get back in there. You cannot do that." I said, "I want a picture of it." I said, "I want to know about what's going on the reservation." He says, "If you don't go back in there, I'm going to have you thrown off and you will not be able to come back to the reservation." And I was kind of like, "Oh, shoot. Why not?" I was not happy. The next day I get to work. Everybody you can think of came up to me and wanted to talk to me privately about ghosts, skinwalkers, UFOs, Bigfoot, anything that happened to have happened on that particular reservation. So I was not teased. I was treated very well and actually kind of revered. It actually made me feel good that people would be willing to come and talk to me in private. And I have not shared their stories or names. I've mentioned a couple of things, but I haven't gone into details. I haven't written anything about it because I thought it was, important it be kept private if they're willing to talk to me, because those are taboo things you don't talk about on any of the reservations in the U.S., probably Canada either. I did have an experience when I was working on the reservation where I was coming back from a weekend away, because there's not a lot of things on the reservation unless they have a dance or something going on. So I was coming back, and it's in the middle of the night because I was always would wait till the last minute to come home. And this huge black horse with big orange glowing eyes stopped right in front of my car. Huge. I've never seen a horse that big in my whole life. And it's just sitting there looking at me. I almost hit the thing, so I had to hit my brakes so I wouldn't hit it. And I remember thinking, because I didn't say anything, I remember thinking, "I'm going to get your picture if you don't, go away." And it just disappeared. It didn't run away. It was gone. And that did happen on the reservation too. So do I believe in skinwalkers? Absolutely. Do I believe unusual things happen on all the reservations? Absolutely. They have a spiritual connection that we Anglos don't have, and they do. So
What
I
about
was
Bigfoot?
fascinated.
Didn't you have a Bigfoot experience?
Oh, yeah. I was on a travel assignment in Maine. I was near Bar Harbor. I was in housing outside of town, about 5 miles, again on a dirt and gravel road, and there's nothing out there but the ocean on one side and woods. That's all there is. So this was in the fall of the year. It was dusk. It was just starting to snow a little bit. And I lived in Ellsworth, Maine at the time. That's where it happened, outside of Ellsworth. And all of a sudden, this brown, hairy thing walks in front of my car. I slam on the brakes so I don't hit it. I did not see its face. It did not stop. It did not look at me, but it was taller than me, taller than and I'm like 5'9", taller than the vehicle. The thing I noticed was no neck. It was dark brown from head to toe, but the top of the head was kind of peaked just a little bit, just a little. I didn't see a jacket or any type of clothes, so I know it wasn't a person. And what was really weird was its hands hung down below its knees. That's the one thing I noticed. So what do? I stop the car. I roll down the window to the passenger side. I hang out of the window trying to get a better look at the thing. Now, what would I have done if it turned around? I wouldn't have had time to protect myself, but I was too curious. I wanted to see what it was. No foul odor. It didn't pay any attention to me whatsoever. It was kind of skinny. I don't know if it was an adolescent or it was sick or it was an elderly Bigfoot. I'm guessing Bigfoot. I can't say for sure. It was not a bear. That I am for sure. I know how bears walk, and they don't walk that long. And it 2 steps, and he was across the road in front of me that quick. And all I remember wishing was, I wish I had a camera. I wish I had a camera, but I don't think I would have even had time to get a picture. By the time I aimed it, I think it would have been in the woods already. But it didn't try to hurt me. It didn't even stop. It didn't pay any attention. It acted like I wasn't even there. and it came across from where the water was, where the ocean is, and then went into the woods, because the woods were on the right hand side of me and the ocean was on the left, with a little bit of a field. And there was nobody around, no houses for another mile or so. Again, if something had happened, there would have been nobody to save me, except the man upstairs if he was in the mood to. But yeah, that is my Bigfoot experience.
How about up in Alaska? Did you experience any paranormal or supernatural stuff up there?
We had a lot of ghost type events. A pilot was killed in World War II, because there used to be a base up in Nome. I lived in Nome for like 10 years, 12 years. And they would see the pilot walking down the road. I never personally saw the pilot, but I got phone calls whenever he was sighted. They also had a lot of UFO sightings up there. And I was an investigator with Mufon while I was up in Nome, Alaska. The problem is, though, because we're on permafrost and there's not many roads, and I think it's like 55 or 60 miles to Teller, which is one of the native villages, and the other road, gosh, went to past Pilgrim Hot Springs the other way, maybe 40, 45 miles, and it was a dirt and gravel road. So you couldn't like really go out and investigate. So I had to do most of my investigations either on ham radio or by telephone, because I couldn't get to where they were. I could drive a snow machine and a four-wheeler, but you can only go so far on those too. So that was interesting. I never personally saw a UFO up there, but I remember others who did. A lot of disc and cigar shapes they saw up there. I do remember that.
So, Rose, can I ask you, when did you start investigating like the paranormal and kind of going into that investigation frequency? What age? And
as soon as I could afford to do it.
okay.
Not a lot was available for a teenager. They didn't take you seriously, really, these groups. And there weren't a lot of groups back then. There was no MUFON group in my hometown. I didn't drive, at that time. Started driving at like 16. So I probably would have had to go to Orlando, which is 42 miles away, to do anything like that. And again, they did not welcome teens. So it was my early 20s. I started going to conferences, asking questions. I joined MUFON when I was in Alaska, and I did that up there for about 10 years as an investigator. Actually, I was an investigator trainee, but there was nobody to train me, so I basically had to learn on my own. And I am proud to say I have the very first MUFON investigator manual, and I still have it. And it was like a mimeograph paper with a cover with holes in it in a notebook. It wasn't a fancy book like it is now. So, and it, it went over, it identified the alien species they knew of at that time, and the type of UFO shapes that they knew at that time. And it wasn't a very thick manual. So, yeah.
Speaking of conferences, you're involved with preparing for some conferences and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing there and what's coming up?
Sure. We're going to have, I'm with a group called Albuquerque UFO UAP Explorations Group. We're a nonprofit group. There's about 650 of us in town and about 1,500 online. And we're going to have our very first conference in April of 2025. It's April 4th, 5th, and 6th, 2025, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I'm going to give you how you can find out about it, and then I'll go into more details. To get into our group info, it's www.abquf, like Frank, os.com. And you can find all kinds of information about the activities and things our group does. We do things online, YouTube. We have in-person lectures. We do a CE5 meditation to call the UFOs down, kind of like Stephen Greer does. We have a meet and greet every month where we get together where people can just talk and get to know each other. We do a lot of activities. So it's free to join. I highly encourage you to join it. Our
What's
conference, uh-huh,
what's
yes,
the YouTube channel called? Is that say
you just,
same name?
same thing.
Okay.
You go into ABQ UFOs and you can get into it and hear Preston Dennett spoken and Steve Bassett, all kinds of folks. So our conference, this is our very first conference. It's called the Alien Explorations Conference. And again, it's April 4th, 5th, and 6th of 2025. It's going to be held at the University of New Mexico Continuing Education Center, and we can hold about 650 people. And we have 12 speakers. And I will tell you, this would be a perfect opportunity for you to meet the Paranormal Rangers because John Dover and Stan Milford will be there up close and in person, and you can get pictures and autographs and hear their lecture and ask lots of questions. It's a great way. We're also going to have Stephen Bassett there, Daniel Sheehan, Greg Bishop, Linda Moulton Howe, and a lot of other people. So it's going to be a really good conference. We're going to cover a lot of information on disclosure. We're going to talk about some of the cases that have happened in New Mexico and other topics about UFOs and aliens. All of the speakers will have vendor tables where between when they're not lecturing, you can come and meet them, talk to them, ask questions. They'll be happy to answer your questions. We will have merchandise for sale like books and DVDs and t-shirts and, all that kind of thing. Also, we'll have food available. We'll have 3 food trucks in the back, plus a couple local organizations, nonprofit organizations selling goodies inside of the dining area. We want it to be fun. We want it to be where you feel like you can learn a lot of things and you can ask a lot of questions and where you'll meet other people, like-minded people. So we're going to try to make it as friendly as possible. I do remember going to my first 2 or 3 conferences. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know what to expect. I had visions of everybody being really weird and out to lunch, which is a terrible misconception I had, but that's what I thought. And I was afraid to talk to people because, believe it or not, at one time I was a really shy, quiet, introverted person. That changed. That's gone. Um, it is. And I encourage you to ask questions. I also encourage you not to believe everything you hear. I encourage you to investigate yourself. Research and investigate and question and find what your truth is, what you feel like you can deal with, or what is feasible that you can believe. I've heard some really far-fetched things that I thought was really crazy. And it ended up being kind of true. So now I kind of question and look before I make a judgment. I can't tell you that everything I saw was a UFO. All I can tell you is I don't know what it was. I can't identify it. I can just tell you from my recollection what I saw or what happened to me. That's all I can do. But you
So with
should
that,
see.
Dale, how
Uh-huh.
much time we got left? Are we at the top?
Yes, we're at the top of the hour. So, Stan, do you want to quickly talk about congratulations in order for you? Do you want to talk about the book and the launching?
Well, I was notified by HarperCollins that the book is now in print. The hard copy is being printed and is still scheduled to be coming out on October 1st. But yeah, it's an exciting moment for me, and I look forward uh, to that time. So, and I guess we'll be having an episode where we talk about the book coming up.
Yes.
I think that's so.
So,
Thank you, Rose. Thank you. That was a
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
wonderful
Thank you, Rose.
episode. Thank you.
Incredible
We
stories.
sure appreciate it.
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
if
we
you
had-
buy,
we might
if you buy Stan's
we
book,
might-
you can take it to that conference that Rose was just talking about, the convention,
Absolutely.
and get it signed
Yeah.
by Stan himself.
Absolutely. Come
Thank you
one,
so
come
much.
all.
So
Thank you.
we might have Rose back on some other time. I know
Yes.
she has a lot more experiences, and she's a great guest. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
she was unable to get her picture on there and video because she's working off her phone. But we're just going to tell everybody that we had to protect her identity and
Start the X Files now.
Yeah. The Men in Black.
Yes.
The Men in Black.
yeah, they might
Will
still
they
be
come
looking
back?
at it.
So for
Thank
those
you guys.
listening and
Thank you for being
watching,
here.
Thank you.
subscribe.